Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and this is our segment, Power of Myth and Symbolism in Star Wars. And today I am joined by Missy, my good friend in mythology and folklore.
Hello again. Yay!
And we're going to talk about the cool topic of dark feminine in Star Wars. Well, this is an interesting one, and something I've personally struggled with a little bit, because how do you talk about this? This is something that is actually very deeply personal, especially to a lot of women and actually a lot of men too. How they view it, how they look at it. I watched some YouTube videos just to be like, hey, what do guys say about dark feminine? And yeah, it's a lot of men I've seen out there have a very specific lens to what dark feminine means. And so we're going to talk about a lot of that before we get into kind of the characters and the journeys and what this all means for you to explore on your own as well. All right, Missy, what does dark feminine mean to you?
What does it mean to me?
What does this mean to you from a Star Wars perspective?
From Star Wars, I mean, it's interesting because when we first started talking about, doing this episode, my initial thought was like, well, there's not actually a lot of dark feminine in Star Wars. No, that was my first instinct is there isn't much. And I think on the surface, it does seem like that, especially, until some more recent releases for sure. To a great extent, I feel that is because George Lucas, I think he really tended to put women on a pedestal to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of his work does have these almost perfect women, and
Mothma, Leia, Ahsoka.
Yes. And listen, it's great that he made so many powerful women in his stories. And I love that. But we want to see them be powerful in diverse ways. Not only that, but we want to see them, display weakness in diverse ways as well. That's also part of everyone's experience, including the feminine experience. So, so I guess I'm glad that we are actually getting a lot more diversity of storytelling because it's giving us a lot more to draw from. But it's really interesting in Star Wars to delve into what varieties of dark feminine are present and what are conspicuously absent. So,
we are recording this just after Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, has finished. And so we have the opportunity to include a very cool dark feminine character. I've also heard, as I am not entirely caught up, there is a dark feminine character in the High Republic. She works for the Nile. We don't know her whole story just yet, but she's done some cool stuff, including filing her teeth to make them more masculine and really interesting things like that. At some point, I will cover her, but we wanted to primarily focus on live action television and animation, just because those are the stories that will most likely plug into or will reflect the collective unconscious and also like push back on it a little bit. So those are the most common and viewed storytelling modes.
Yeah. The use of symbolism in visual media is just like a huge part of all of the mythology. These are things that are much harder to do often in a novel form. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
But if that character resonates with you, awesome. I remember the concept of dark feminine, again, like to Missy, your point, was not something that I really heard about, although I'd seen it in the Clone Wars, etc. But it was not something that came up too often in conversation, say in fandom or in meta, except for when there was this period of time between The Last Jedi and what it turned into The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9, where a lot of women, especially on the internet and femme-presenting people, wanted Rey to show her darkness. Yeah, This is kind of where this topic came from, because there was a lot of conversations. I think there was a bunch of podcasts, especially by lady-run podcasts. There was a lot of meta out there on like what that would look like. There was a lot of like fan art of Dark Ray before Dark Ray happened. There was like this whole like concept of maybe Ben would go good and Ray would go dark, and then they would have to like balance each other out. And then there's a lot of reasons why you might end up wanting that to happen or having that happen in a story, which is really interesting. But what did that mean to you, Missy?
Well, I was definitely one of those people that wanted to see her go dark. There's a few reasons for it. One thing I want to kind of just back up on in general and just talk about, kind of the appeal of dark feminine in general to women, especially, and femme people, is it's not an expression that is typically permitted in patriarchal cultures. It is not encouraged. It is something is like, no, like suppress your dark side. Don't. And you could argue that's true of men as well, but I would say it's much more heavily policed for women. And that's, the whole premise of misogyny is that it's a system for, controlling the feminine. And so, what you end up seeing is in fiction, especially, there's the draw of the dark feminine. One place that you see this sometimes is, of course, the ballet Swan Lake, which I actually was lucky enough to see live recently. It was so wonderful. But what's cool about that, and I've studied it for years because I've just been fascinated by it, is if you listen to interviews with ballerinas who get to dance the Odette Odile role, they love getting to be the Black Swan. It is some of the most fun dancing they get to do. They love it because she's powerful and she's sexually aggressive, and she just is, she's kind of conniving, and they just love it. She's very forthright, and it's just such a fun role to play because Odette, while the heroine she's kind of the perfect, submissive woman. She's demure, and she's, she just, definitely a bit of a damsel and everything. And she's still a great character too, but everyone just really loves to be the Black Swan because it's a space where you can let those feelings out and embrace it and enjoy it. And it's a safe place to do that because it's art. And so I think that's the appeal of the dark feminine in general. And so I would actually say that's what I wanted for Ray to a great extent, because Ray's whole characterization in the first two films of the sequel trilogy was, being the good girl to a great extent. And it was, be a good girl, follow your elders, like do the right thing. You have to be on the good side, be with the good guys, and that's why her attraction to Kylo is so dangerous, is because, it really, it breaks into this image she has of herself as, the good girl hero. Yeah. And so I thought that the idea
and the girl that's waiting for her parents to come home.
Yes.
Waiting.
She's a child. Yeah. She's waiting. She has to be good so they'll come back for her. Exactly. Yeah. So all of that kind of thing. So it was just like, this was so much of her characterization that it was very obvious that she had suppressed the darker parts of herself, but also because her characterization is somewhat vague, she was to some extent a self-insert character. So as the audience, I want to see the girl go in there and explore her darkness, because that's a way for me to vicariously explore my darkness. So I'm like, you go, girl, go do something bad and look awesome in your black dress or whatever. I was super excited for all of that. And there were so many, to your point, there were so many different ways that could have gone. And then we got what we got.
Yeah. And for me, after The Last Jedi, I thought that her exploring the metaphorical dark cave, which was actually a dark cave, and the fact that her parents were nobodies and she's nobody and she doesn't mean anything and that there is no one there. That was an aspect of her darkness. And then confiding in her dark animus, Kylo, and like playing with him in the shadows was part of this dark exploration for the character that I thought she had gone through. And so I didn't need her to go dark side in The Rise of Skywalker personally, but now that I'm looking back on it, I'm like, it would have said so much from a freedom perspective that she had gone further beyond sparkle fingers and lightning, personally, that she had actually cracked in some way. I don't know. It's a complicated issue because in storytelling and in these sort of adventures and journeys that characters go through, just because they're cut short doesn't mean that they can't be picked up and go on another adventure and start again. But it does mean that she is back at the beginning, which symbolically is exactly what the show and the movies have shown us. She is back at the beginning of a new journey. She didn't get to complete a full journey and an arc and learn the lessons she needed to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's hard.
Absolutely.
That's hard as women to be like, so she doesn't get to have a story completed.
Yeah.
She doesn't get to learn. She doesn't get to learn how to come back from the darkest, deepest, dankest, deadest place of you.
Yes.
Because we as women ourselves, Missy and I talk about this all the time, especially with regards to a particular book we'll be referencing in a moment, is that women experience life, death, life, the rebirth cycle all the time in our lives. And in fact, that's part of our entire hormonal structure, right? But then also, as we move through the different stages of humanity, all humans do it. Women are just sometimes more attuned to it because of the expectations of society on us.
It's more visible in our lives.
Yeah.
I think that those cycles are really visible in the lives of many women, again, both due to, biological makeup and also just to your point, societal expectations. A lot of women are caregivers. And what does that mean? That means that you are aiding people through cycles of birth, growth, death, rebirth. People are caring for
elderly parents. They're caring for kids. They're caring for their friend group around them.
Yeah.
Right. Often
exactly.
That is relied on more from a femme perspective. And it's hard to see the stories that we are drawn to and speak to us in so many resonant ways, not reflecting our lived in life in symbolic, metaphorical ways. That's what we're saying. And so feminine stories are frequently arrested in Star Wars and cut short in the service of the masculine journey. And we can tell you exactly how that happens in Star Wars through the characters that we have been given. So I'm really, really excited that Missy said, yeah, let's do this, because she's absolutely the right person. You're so smart, Missy. This was your thesis statement.
Stop.
So I did want to just take a quick, brief break just to talk about the books that both you and I have been obsessed with in studying and in bringing up beyond kind of Campbellinian work and how he views things, including the Goddesses book, which is one of his later it was taken from his lectures and notes, pulled together to talk about goddesses, later work. What other books are you referencing, thinking about as we talk through this? Because I think that some of our listeners want to know, what goes into making a show like this. Well, it's lots of reading and thinking.
It's true. And it's, I think it's important to know that, my emphasis definitely, I've read a lot less Campbell than you have and Murdoch as well. I've read them, but certainly not in the depth that you have. So a lot of what I read tends to just be a lot of folk tales and a lot of fairy tales. So I have several just collections of different types of fairy tales. I have, a collection of Rapunzel style tales, various Rapunzel tales from around the world, Beauty and the Beast tales, mermaid tales, all different kinds of things. I also have, in more recently, I've been trying to pick up collections of tales from non-Western cultures. I think it's really important to make sure that, we're not getting too Eurocentric with our stories. And so that's a really important thing as well. But then for analyses that I read, there's big ones, and I mentioned a couple of them before, but I'll just repeat them so that we have the context. One, of course, is In Search of the Swan, Maiden, a narrative on folklore and gender by Barbara Faslevi. I talk about it all the time. Sorry, not sorry. It's amazing, and you should read it. But it's just great. And
it's on the way. I found a copy, so I'm
so excited for you. I saw you found a copy. I was like, yes.
It's my summer reading plans.
You're gonna love it. It's great. But like I like reading it because it is so insightful, but it is important to know that this is the perspective of these tales from a patriarchal viewpoint. Like the idea is that these stories are reactions to patriarchy. And that's really important because then the other one that we've been reading, of course, is Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And she is the opposite. She, removes these stories from their patriarchal context and said, what does this mean to a feminine person? Not because they're oppressed or anything, but because they themselves are going through the life-death life cycle and on their own life. And what does this mean to them? How are they growing? How are they learning? How are they changing? How can they take hold of their power? So that's really important. And then the last one I am going to mention, and I haven't finished it, and it's a series of essays anyway, so it's just going to take some time. But I've been reading one called Vindicating the Vixens, Revisiting Sexualized, Vilified, and Marginalized Women of the Bible.
Oh, wow.
It's so cool. It just goes into basically all the bad girls of the Bible and how, did we get them wrong? Are they terrible? Or are they actually not so bad?
Are they actually just liberating?
Exactly.
Ooh, interesting.
It's fun to read. And biblical analysis is obviously a whole other ball of wax, which is not the same as folklore analysis, but it's still really, really interesting. So that's been a really helpful source as well for this conversation.
So other than Women Who Run with the Wolves, which again, I totally agree. This has been my new preaching book because I love Maureen Murdoch and the heroine's journey and the idea that, there is a femme version of the heroine's journey. And yes, men, non-women can go on a heroine's journey. It's an internalized journey primarily. But what I love about Women Who Run with the Wolves, it's closer to alchemy from an alchemical psychology perspective, in that it doesn't rely on a woman or a femme person adapting to a femme aspect of a person adapting to the culture of patriarchy to survive first and then rejecting that. There isn't an assumption that you need to be aligned with patriarchy. And that to me is so empowering because I don't resonate with patriarchy. I don't even want to go near it. And so if I'm going on a journey where I am more enlightened than I was yesterday and I'm starting a new journey, I don't even want to go near having to fit in with the boys club.
Yep.
And that's really, really interesting. The other two books that I have incorporated are both Marie Louise von Franz, and she was the sort of pupil and sort of, I guess, one of Carl Jung's, heirs apparent, but primarily she focused on psychology, mythology, and how that presents in fairy tales. And so there's a lot of symbolism, archetypical conversation, and what that means for us as storytellers and people who are reading these fairy tales, and how important, especially the feminine and aspects of the dark are in them. And so the two books are The Feminine in Fairy Tales and Shadow and Evil in Fairy Tales that I've been consuming. And they're actually based on lectures that she had in Germany, kind of post World War II. Also, just a shout out, if you're really interested in Marie Louise von Franz, her collective works are now being grouped together and sold. So you can actually get them now, which is really great. She is kind of, a hard read. I would say all of these are very hard reads. Maybe the exception would be
Yeah.
If you listen to Clarissa Pinkola Estes's like conversations about the wild woman archetype, because she's a storyteller and she's really fascinating and interesting, and that's enjoyable. It's some of these are just really dense and thick. If you're interested, dig into it. It's just really hard. It's hard for us, and we're like fascinated by these topics. We have a drive,
These are difficult. And you reminded me, actually, if I may, I want to throw in one more that I just thought of. I don't have it with me, but it's excellent. So it's called Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny.
Oh.
And it's challenging. Like, for those of you out there, I mean, honk, honk, we love the library. If you've got an advanced degree, you might not struggle with it as much as I did, but it was definitely one of the more challenging books I've read, because it spends a lot of time establishing like terminology and stuff, but it's excellent. And I do recommend it, because it's another one of those things that if you are reading any of this stuff and you're trying to detach these stories from the dominant patriarchal culture, it really helps to understand what is coming from patriarchy and what is actually separate from that.
Exactly. And so before we get into the characters again, I just want to kind of reiterate, what is darkness? Why are characters dark? And what are the two lenses that we get in Star Wars? Because we get two different lenses in Star Wars. We get a patriarchal lens, which, again, Star Wars, especially the 1977 version and the, stuff that came after with the EU, which I'm not going to cover the EU. So that means I'm not going to talk about Mara Jade, and I'm not going to talk about Aboleth. Although those are fascinating topics, Star Wars 1977 is patriarchal. It just is. So is the rest of our society still to this day. It is the dominator culture. And so we have to kind of separate, again, showing what is a patriarchal version of a dark feminine and what is a non-patriarchal version of a dark feminine, and where we're at from a Star Wars perspective and what stories we probably still need to tell. But what is darkness, Missy? What do we mean when we talk about dark?
Well, I think, to your point, once you get outside of the basic patriarchal woman bad,
all women are either in service of my sexual needs or not, and thus they're prudes.
Yeah. Or care needs.
Care needs too.
Care needs. Like, basically, I either use woman in some way or she's useless to me, and therefore, like, if she does not serve me in some way, she is not, she is bad. She is dark bad.
Yeah. So if she's not doing what I want her to do all the time, she's bad.
Right. And that's basic. And like, we're going to see that as we go through these characters. I mean, it definitely shows up for sure. Even today, even now, unfortunately. But outside of that, obviously, if you've listened to Marie Claire at any time before this, you have certainly heard us talk about the Jungian shadow. And of course, what is the shadow, right? It's the suppressed part of the psyche. So it might be suppressed. It might be neglected. It might even be a part of yourself that you've given too much free rein to, and you're allowing it to control you. It could be any of these things.
It could be angry.
It could be, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a part of yourself that you have not integrated. And so the whole feminine has both dark and light aspects, or as you're going to hear us talk about, life and death aspects, because the feminine is the life, death, life cycle. They both must exist. Life, death, and rebirth must all be present in order for you to be a whole person and for you to have a life journey in which you're constantly moving forward and changing and not sort of existing in stasis or metaphorical death. So, what is the dark feminine? The dark feminine is the necessary part of the whole. And frequently it is the shadow, which again, may be suppressed in some way.
And Joey Salloway would talk about this as divided feminine. The idea that whole and powerful women are actually fully integrated with their darkness. They've done the work. They've gone on their journeys, and they know what their darkness is, and they've become friends with it or at least they understand it, right? They understand where it comes from. When we get more patriarchal views of femininity, and especially dark femininity, you end up getting femme fatales or straight up whores. And, like, I don't mean to use that word lightly, because it's not like slut shaming or anything, but that is the patriarchal view, and thus a divided or mutilated feminine, that you are only the one thing. And these are, and women who can only be virginal maidens is political protagonism to suit the patriarchy. Yeah. And so in a way, this show, my art, Missy's art, in our conversation is propaganda. I'm straight up going to tell you, this is empathy generating for the rights of women to be dark, dirty, messy creatures.
Yes.
Because what is a whole feminine creature, right? I'm using creature a lot.
Yeah.
She is both the creature and the goddess. She is both at the same time. And the goddess, from a Campbellian perspective, is always all things. He always got it right. He just didn't put a focus on the priority of those stories. He always got it right. He said to see the true goddess is to be overwhelmed by the fact that she is everything. Right?
I love that.
And on a hero's journey, you would run into different aspects of her. The femme fatale, like, or the seductress, sorceress, like Circe. Or you would run into a full goddess and maybe be killed by her, right? Like you run into an actual goddess, right? But she is both life-giving and death-giving, because she has both of those aspects within her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And they're both necessary, and they're both very necessary. And that's a great kind of segue into, I really do want to talk about, because you just mentioned, like, how do we use a term like horror in a, mythological folklore context? Because it doesn't mean the same thing it means in, colloquial parlance, if you will. So I do want to start definitely mentioning that. So most people have heard of the maiden, mother, crone archetypes. We're actually going to dive a little bit deeper into those. There's a variation on maiden, mother, crone, which is actually maiden, queen, crone, because a queen is a feminine character at the height of her powers. And that might be a mother, or it might be a metaphorical mother, because a queen is typically
the mother of the nation, or the mother of the society, or the...
Exactly.
Like she's like the spiritual leader sometimes too. Like that can be
exactly. An
example would be Leia.
Yeah, perfect example. And that's what we're going to do here. Is we're going to go into how Star Wars has each of these maidens, mother or queen, and then crone. Which characters express this? I will say it's going to be some characters you didn't expect to express these different aspects.
It's awesome.
I'm so excited. But one of the things to understand is these are feminine archetypes. Now, the corresponding masculine archetypes are let me make sure I get these right. I want to do this correctly. All right. So it goes, and they actually go in a progression. So there's 6 of them. It's maiden, hero, queen, king, crone, and mage. So feminine are maiden, queen, crone, and masculine are hero, king, mage. And each one of these you're on a journey from one to the next, from maiden to hero, from hero to queen, queen to king, king to crone, crone to mage, and then mage restarts the rebirth process and is going to go back to maiden then. So this is the progression for character arcs in the human life.
And this is important because a lot of people will separate them out gendered, right? But all people go through all femme-masc stages.
Yes. And that's tremendously important. So
people.
Yes. We're not talking about men or women necessarily. We're talking about all people, all genders, goes through these stages. These are stages in the progression of your psyche throughout your life, because we all go through the life cycles. And that's what happens, right? Is the previous version of you dies and the new version of you is reborn or is born. And then you move on to the next thing. All things have their time, and then you move on to the next. So then within that, there are shadows for each of these archetypes, and there are passive and aggressive shadows. So what happens is if you fall into a shadow variation of this archetype, your progress has been arrested and you cannot move on to the next stage, onto the next archetype, because you're stuck. You are in that metaphorical death. You are, trapped usually. So with the maiden, maiden is a perfectly normal, healthy stage to be in, but if you fall into the shadow version, you have either the damsel or the vixen, or more commonly known as Madonna whore complex. Yeah. So that's what you have. And
I think it's important to say, like, Luke is a damsel at the start
Absolutely.
of A New Hope.
100%.
Right?
Especially when he refuses the call. That's him saying, no, I don't want to go do the scary thing. I want to be the damsel.
Yeah. Protect me, please.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So this is important to recognize the femininity within masculine characters.
Yes.
We're primarily going to talk about femme characters when we get into the story.
Yes.
Further.
Definitely. And then the other two feminine archetypes, of course, so with Queen, the passive and aggressive shadows are Snow Queen.
So like Elsa.
Right. What does she do? She retreated. She left behind her responsibility to care for these people as their metaphorical mother, and she bailed.
Yeah, she bailed. She built her own castle and said, "Nuh-uh."
Yes, that's one. And then aggressive is sorceress. And this recent example of this one actually is Wanda, is Scarlet Witch. Yeah. She's the sorceress because she's the mother who's like, I'm going to get my children. And anyway, that's fun. So so that's the Queen. And those are the versions of the Queen you don't want because, you're arrested, you're stuck, you're not progressing on to the next version.
And you did say there were passive versus aggressive, right?
Yes. So Snow Queen is passive and sorceress is aggressive. The healthy journey of the Queen would be to progress to King, which means to say you let your children grow, you let them go and you let them grow and they move beyond you. And then you progress to the King because now you understand that you are protecting the whole kingdom, not just your own brood. Yeah. So you're
making decisions for a larger scope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's very go ahead. Psychically apotheosis in a journey perspective because you become one with the universe and understanding your place in the universe.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Exactly. So then the last one, of course, is then Crone. And the thing is that we hear the term crone, and again, you have to kind of divorce it from its common usage. We think of crone as automatically being like hag or, witch or bad. Yeah. And it's not inherently bad. Crone is a stage of wisdom. It's a stage of, you've been through these previous two stages before, and now you are the crone. You have the wisdom. You have the wisdom that you can pass on to other people. And so there is a journey that has to be taken there. Go ahead.
Yeah. And just as a slight kind of where these things come from is psychically the stages of womanhood.
Of life.
And life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's why it's broken up into like 3.
Yeah, well, there arguably it would be like maiden first 30 years of your life, and then queen next 30 years of your life, and then
crone.
Yeah, crone last 30 years of your life.
And there's a lot of like around like whether you're menstruating or not.
Yeah,
psychically, absolutely. Right? Like there's a little bit of that too. But that doesn't mean that it's only for menstruating people, I should say.
Yep.
Right? Like this is psychically, everybody goes through this. And like when I describe it to guys who like are like, I'm just feeling like everything is dead and I can't get out of this stuck place. And I'm like, life, death, life. I see. Yes. Yep. Okay. So you're just waiting to be reborn. And if you view it like that, you can cut down on your frustration on what you're able to be controlling and work on yourself right now. That's a time to work on yourself in the life, death, life cycle. Is you're getting ready for the next stage, whatever that is.
Exactly.
You. Yeah, it's
exactly.
Good. Sorry, you were talking about the dark versions of.
Oh yeah, no, I was just finishing up. I was just finishing up with the shadow versions of Crone, which are Hermit and Wicked Witch. And I could give examples of these, but I'm not going to because it's going to be more fun to talk about them later.
Yes, it will.
So.
All right. So, okay, let's get in here. So we've talked about kind of like the dark versions of these and named them archetypically. What is the purpose of doing this? Like, why does our psyche need to be dark? Why do we need to have darkness?
I mean, it depends on, the way you're expressing it is it depends on who is receiving it. But that's what it means. It depends on the intended audience. Is that who's the darkness for? As who needs the darkness? Why?
Yeah.
Typically it means something's missing.
Oh, yes. And there's also an aspect of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've spoken with Lucasfilm people before, they'll talk about how Darth Vader is their mascot. Why is Darth Vader their mascot? Why is Darth Vader their Mickey Mouse? Right? Why is Kylo so appreciated by children? Right? What is the appeal of Ventress? Like why are villains especially loved?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because there's this aspect of I don't care what society wants of me. I don't care what the world wants of me. I want what I want. Because if we are too far on the socially constrained sort of super ego or what culture and society puts on us, then we cut off aspects of ourself that actually needed nurturing. And those aspects of ourself become shadows, the darkness. And especially it happens more often in a patriarchal culture where women have to cut off their desires, or femme people have to cut off the things that make them feminine because they're not desirable to the masculine.
Yeah. Or even masculine people aren't allowed to embrace the feminine aspects of themselves.
You're not allowed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So exploring dark feminine as a masculine person is exploring your desires. It's exploring your anger, which is not bad. Having anger is not bad. That's really important to say. It's how you utilize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so exploring this from a character's perspective is really freeing because it's all just shadow work when you're watching a character on screen and you're watching them explore their darkness, or the characters interact with that darkness on screen is you playing in your own subconscious too, especially if you think about those characters after the show or the movie is done. And what that means for the characters inside of fiction kind of depends on who is viewing what.
Mm-hmm. And another aspect of this is that we live in a society that has really lost many of our initiation rites. Mm-hmm. There used to be in earlier cultures initiation rites for many of these stages. There were ceremonies and rites and rituals for maidens and for mothers and for crones. They had each of these things, and the other, people who expressed the other archetypes in that culture would guide the younger, people on to the next one. And so, we don't really have that. And so it tends to be, fiction is one of the places that we can find these things. A lot of our buried instincts and intuition, we can access those through story. We can say, my culture tells me this, but really I feel this on an instinctive level. And you can rediscover that through these tales.
Yes, exactly. And that's one thing that Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about with the wild woman archetype, is that a lot of this is listening to the old wild woman wisdom, something that's deep that in your bones. She talks about bones a lot, right? Like the wisdom has always been there, and you just have to sort of become exposed enough to listen to it and hear it. And there's like a song aspect to reviving yourself in a new formed way that is separate from what has happened to you in the past. it's really, really fulfilling to view the world in a way that there is never an end. There is only new beginnings.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So good.
All right, characters. You ready?
Yeah, characters. Yeah. So we wanted to dig into different characters and kind of what they did with dark feminine inside of Star Wars and kind of what they mean. And then through this, we're going to talk about sort of what is important to call out about them. The first character I wanted to is actually like one of, in timeline order, is one of the last we actually see, which is Dark Rey.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about her because, like we talked about at the start of the episode, this was slightly disappointing for many women. And I actually think that since that point, many creators have done, like fan creators have done better jobs of exploring the concept of Dark Rey since Tross came out than actually Tross did. Because let's talk about it. What is she?
I mean, she's male gaze. Or masculine gaze. She's a projection of how many men in a patriarchal culture view women.
She's very vixen-like, right?
Yes.
She's dark. She's dressed in a very attractive dress, and she's got this really cool lightsaber that symbolically is very. It opens, right?
Yeah.
So that's like.
Listen, guys, it looks like legs opening. Okay, that's like it's on a hinge. I'm not sure what to tell you. That's really, I mean, especially when you take it in context with everything else. It's. Okay, so listen, we've had a lot of conversation in the past about how Rey, they put her back in white for her final film, which makes no sense for the progression, especially given the history of Star Wars. You know, Anakin over his 3 films, moving, from white to brown to black. Luke going from white to
more
gray
of his darkness.
To black. Exactly. Like this is very typical. So logically, Rey would have gone through the same progression. And maybe they wanted to break that cycle fair. But like what we saw was they went to a costume for her that was even more white than her first one. And they gave her the hood, which according to them is a reference to Leia's hood, which was from Leia's maiden phase, which means that Rey started as a maiden and they ended her as a maiden. They did not allow her to progress to queen or mother. It did not happen. And so the point is that if you have the sort of light Rey, so to speak, which is, this pure virginal maiden, she's perfect. She is, and
she's struggling with her darkness, but never gives in.
No, but so much of the movie is such a cynical reaction to the criticisms of, TLJ, especially, and not even just TLJ. Obviously, a lot of people didn't like Rey from TFA because they thought she was quote unquote overpowered. Again, this woman encroaching on a masculine space. They did not like that. Oh, wait a minute, she can't be better than the guys. That's not acceptable. It's not. Anyway, point being that we have this context to know that that's what was going on, which is why we read Dark Rey differently. We read Dark Rey as the projection of masculine anxieties that she is, because we know all this additional context.
And we know exactly that she is because she has sharpened teeth.
Yes.
That is a projection of masculine anxieties.
Yep.
It is.
And if you listen to the snake conversation we had, we talked about it already.
Yeah, we did. But it is vaginal dentata, which is the fear that you will be consumed.
Yep.
Yeah. Rey has none of those fears. So this feels false. She already dealt with a snake and dealt with it differently. Right? So this is like, by that point in the story, she had already handled her fear of the consumption and healed it, right? It was, the snake scene is awesome in Tross.
Yeah.
It is my favorite part of it's up there in my favorite Star Wars moments. But Dark Rey doesn't represent that to Rey. She represents that to the writers.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
They fear Rey's power, and the potential that Rey could become powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And what that would mean would be that she would consume them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What? Okay.
Yeah. So she is. So yes, she is. Dark Rey is the vixen whore character, which now again, two perspectives on that. Again, for the patriarchal perspective, it's obviously she's a threat to masculine dominance, and they fear her. They fear her sexual power, her sexual freedom. But
in the story, she is afraid of giving in to Kylo and her sexual desires.
Yes. But also, I think the other thing to keep in mind about a vixen is that a vixen is still, so you would assume that the damsel would be the shadow form that is dependent, and it is, but it's passively dependent. The vixen is aggressively dependent. What it means is she doesn't see how she can stand on her own, so she feels she has to exchange something of herself, which still allows others to have power over her, which is, so this version of Rey only believes that she has value for what she can offer to the resistance, or the extent to which she can make herself like Leia or like Luke or whatever. But like, she doesn't see what value she has on her own independently of that, which is why it's just wild, because, you know, even like Ben's comments to her, you know, just you, or you're nothing but not to me. Like, he's constantly telling her, I see the value you have, just you, yourself, not for what you can do for anyone. But she's not allowed to really grasp that and take it. And so, yes, so that's the other thing that this Dark Rey kind of expresses is, you know, it's mostly about the writers, the masculine writers, but to the extent that it has anything to do with Rey herself, it's really, you know, that fear of not being able, not being willing to take her own power independent of her mentors.
Not, and that's what we see. And we see that she is stuck in that place.
Yep.
The whole movie, all the way to the end.
Yep. And she ends the story still a maiden. She never progresses to queen or mother.
And this is where I've been saying that Rey needs another journey, just so that she can have her own journey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give it to us, Lucasfilm. We want it.
All right, let's talk about an also really interesting character. This is actually my favorite dark feminine character, I think, in Star Wars. I have one more, but she's also of the same group. Ventress. Let's talk about Ventress.
Yes. Oh
my god, is she amazing. Not only is she voiced by like an amazing voice actress, but also like her story, what she goes through, her just straight up power. And yes, she falls into the vixen, dark feminine aspects. Active. She is active. She has been tortured. You know, she has been, she's a tool of patriarchy, right? She's fulfilling like this handmaiden of darkness concept, because she's never really fully a Sith. She's never really fully coming into her own power. She is reliant on others and yet also is used. And we get the so amazing flirty dialogue with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Quinlan Vos in Dark Disciple.
Oh my gosh. By the way, and not to like go on a total tangent here, but I only just recently watched the episode of her and Obi-Wan fighting Maul and Savage, and I wish someone had told me how amazing that scene is, because like they're back to back fighting, they're throwing the lightsaber to each other, they got this cute little flirtatious dialogue the whole time. I was like, this is amazing. Where are the fics?
Yeah, like there was a lot of Ventress stuff earlier on, but I don't know if she's as popular to explore.
I don't know. It's weird. Like so it's funny because of course Ventress was introduced in the first Clone Wars series, the 2D one, the Genndy Tartakovsky one. And you don't get much backstory for her in that one. She's just Dooku's apprentice, and that's kind of all you really get. You
get a little bit of her personality. But that's about it, yeah.
Yeah, but she's cool. And then, you know, obviously you get a lot more than in the Clone Wars. But I will say, So my daughter, who is 6, has been watching Clone Wars with us, and she loves Ventress.
Oh,
constantly telling me that she's her favorite character, and just every time she sees her on screen, she goes, "Oh, she's so cool." I'm just like, so definitely she has very strong appeal. She does, yeah, she has very strong appeal. But it is interesting the way that she is a character who, more or less, when she's introduced, starts out, to your point, as a tool of patriarchy. Also, I just want to mention, since we've already kind of gone down this path anyway, Castle Serrano, which is Dooku's fortress.
Yeah,
it's a big phallus, and it just is. Every time I see it, it makes me laugh because I'm just like, of course,
so is Vader's
not
fortress.
Yeah, but the shape of Castle Serrano is
it is. Yeah, but have you seen A, Dooku's lightsabers, B, Ventress's lightsabers, C, Sheev Palpatine's lightsabers.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, 100%. So not subtle. But yeah, so she is that. And then she returns when she is betrayed. She returns to the fold. She returns to her mother's breast, so to speak. And it's fascinating because she's still a maiden during all of this. She's still in the maiden phase. And she's living that, like you said, that kind of vixen, aggressive variation. But she really does kind of become a little bit trapped because she's, again, either she's a tool of patriarchy or she's this child in on Dathomir.
Her mother's embrace. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
In mother, in the archetypical mother kind of way, but we'll get there. I do want to point out, like, in Dark Disciple, she joins up with Quinlan Vos and they go and do a bunch of work, and they're hired kind of by the Jedi to go and try and kill Dooku. Quinlan ends up falling to the dark side. She ends up rescuing him and sacrificing her life to save him. She never leaves, although they do have sex in it. She never leaves the maiden phase.
I don't know if I agree. I think she has her moment of becoming a queen. I do.
Like, in the end, she makes a choice, right?
Yeah.
To fight off, like, the darkness on the planet.
Well, when she
goes after him,
because she returns home several times. Like, she keeps going out trying to take revenge on Dooku, and then coming back home every time she fails, and they keep this cycle occurs several times. And when she comes back the last time, she says, "I'm ready. I'm ready to become a full Night Sister." And Talzin says to her, "All right, you're going to have to let your old life go. That life is over. It's
like
done."
In Clone Wars. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. She says that life is over. It's done. And now you're going to look to the future. And what I love about that's so very cool is that this is, and then she has a literal ritual where she is submerged in water, and then they rise her up and she becomes
rebirth.
Right. She has a rebirth and everything. It's very cool. But after that, she is in community now. She's no longer on independently worrying about her need to go take revenge on Dooku. She's focused on, I'm here for my family. I'm here for my clan. I'm a member, of the Night Sisters now. And she's, and then when Grievous attacks, she's commanding and she's giving guidance. She's saying, "All right, go here, go
she
there,
is a leader within the
trees."
community.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
No, you're right. She is in the Queen, because she's also like the last Night Sister that she is aware of when she's in Dark Disciple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So she progresses to Queen. Yeah, absolutely.
And what would be really cool is if Ventress came back as some sort of spiritual crone that could
I would love it.
That would be amazing. Be cool. Yeah. Unfortunately, spoiler for a million years ago, she has died in Dark Disciple, sacrificing herself. It's sad, and yeah,
it is very sad.
Yeah. One thing, I just want to take a quick aside and talk about Night Sister culture.
Yes, please.
So, it's dirty and dark and gross and swampy, and like where they live is this like dark planet that is sort of archetypically, when you read people that talk about the mother goddess archetype, she is the cave, she is the darkness, she is the swamp, like she's so close between death and life that it's like both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where they live. That's where the Night Sisters live. It's a matriarchal culture. Women are in charge of the whole planet, even the Night Brothers, the Dathomirians.
Yeah. I'd actually like to, I was going to save this for the conversation about Mother Talzin because we're going to dive deeper into that, but I'll go ahead and do it now because it's an appropriate moment for this. So specifically, the territory of Dathomir that the Night Sisters live in, there are egg sacs hanging from the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And later, some egg sacs, not all of them, some are organic and clearly contain some potential life, but some of them actually turn out to be burial sacks. And that's where these sort of undead Night Sisters are pulled from when they need more for their army. But the point is that all of this potential life hangs from the trees in this swamp. Eggs are seeds. They are the source of life and knowledge. They contain the full life-death life cycle within them. Seed and bone symbolism are extremely similar. We've already talked about how like bones
have the potential to be reborn, right? Because you can grow from your bones, and bones are underground and seeds are underground, just waiting to be reborn.
Right. And their old knowledge, that is where, that is the last thing that exists of your body after you die is your bones. So the idea is that all knowledge and wisdom, is contained in your bones. So that's why when you say like I knew it in my bones, that's what you mean is, when you say that.
I feel it in my bones, or that's where your intuition and your, the knowledge that came from before that even you aren't maybe consciously aware of. This is all collective unconscious knowledge. You know it because everybody knows it. But yet maybe you have never listened to it.
Yeah. So a pile of bones or a nest of eggs would be basically the same thing. And what do you have here? You have these sacks containing bodies, a pile of bones, and you have these sacks containing eggs, which are the seed of life. So I'm going to read briefly this quote from Women Who Run with the Wolves because it explains this. And it says, for women, the river beneath the river world, the bone woman home place, contains direct knowing about seedlings, rootstocks, the seed corn of the world. In Mexico, women are said to carry the light of life. This light is located not in a woman's heart, not behind her eyes, but en los ovarios, in her ovaries, where all the seed stock is laid down before she is even born. This is the knowing to be gained in being close to the wild woman. So there's more to that, but it's just, this is the life cycle. This is everything. And this is on Dathomir. Dathomir is a red planet. Think like moon's blood, basically. Everything about it. This is all of the feminine intuition and wisdom in the galaxy is here on Dathomir.
That's the only place that we know of that is powerfully feminine in Star Wars in this way.
And to the consuming thing that we talked about before. The entrance to the Night Sisters fortress is through a mouth.
Yes.
So
and
cool.
into a cave, right? Which is cave is associated with womanhood and rebirth and all of those sorts of things. And Estes, Clarissa Pinkola Estes in the Wild Woman archetype, she talks about how when you need to be reborn, you need to go into the cave. You need to go into the wet place to sort of experience and get everything that you need. You need to be in the dark to be reborn. All of this symbolism is repeated and repeated and repeated in Dathomir, including when Maul himself is reborn. He is brought into the cave. Same with Savage. He's brought into the cave to be reborn in a new version of himself.
Yep.
It's really, really interesting. I'm sure, as a shout out to Katie Pohot Dameron, I'm going to have her on the call on an episode at some point to talk about Mythic Maul, because his stuff is so interesting, especially like when he turns into the spider and all of that stuff.
And Maul and Savage are actually both maidens as well.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
At this point in time, they also do not break free of their association with mentors and with the people who sort of keep them entrapped and dependent.
Yeah. Unless Small comes back.
Right.
He could.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, he could.
Mm-hmm.
He dies because and my hope is that his obsession with mentors dies and he becomes a queen king phase, mid-phase.
That would be great.
Because that would be really cool. And that would be like a semi-goddess / god move if he turns into like a spiritual god. That would be really cool. Anyways,
that would be.
This is my not so subtle plea to Lucasfilm to do that. Yeah, we'll get back into Dathomir as it relates to what Mother Talzin represents, because when we get to her, because there's so much more to say. Next up, did you want to talk about Trilla or Riva next?
I don't want to separate them. I think they have to be discussed together.
They're together. Yeah.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone noticed the similarities immediately. It's clearly not accidental. And I think it's great. But first, I think I want you to go first, talking about, I would say start with Reva, just since we just came off of Kenobi. I want to hear your thoughts.
The high of Reva. Okay, so what does she represent in this story? Well, she actually has so many shadow aspects that are within her that she's really actually quite fascinating. So first things first that I noticed is that she is a dark feminine aspect of Anakin Skywalker that is trying to kill him. She is the dark shadow of the remains, the animus of Anakin, the femininity, the thing that still feels the guilt for killing the temple, that misses family, that wanted to be something more, that is literally hunting the galaxy trying to kill him. Sneaky, right? She's pretending to be with him, but she is that aspect. She's also kind of like an animus aspect to Obi-Wan, which is the primary lens of the show. And she's also on her own. That's really important. And for a singular episode, more than that, for many of the episodes when we have the lens of the story on Leia, she's also a dark mother. Yes.
Yes.
Let's
Come
talk
closer,
about it.
child.
Come closer, child. Oh, they're not going to make it. I'll take care of you. Oh, yeah.
So
All right. What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about what she represents from an animus perspective?
Yeah, whatever you think is best. I was just going to kind of talk about her, again, maiden phase, shadow form of Vixen. Same thing, again, very consistent with like what we just talked about as far as Ventress. And again, I want to back up here and remind everyone, when we say Vixen or horror, we're not talking necessarily about sexual. What it's that aggressive. Means, well, it's aggressive, but it also, it's that active, aggressive form of dependence. What it means is that you're dependent on an exchange. You have to exchange with, in this case, with power, with patriarchy, with the empire. She is, in order to get what she wants, she has to offer something to the empire.
So she has become like them. She
exactly
works under them. She is looking to gain, she's trying to use the power that she's pretending to be like.
Exactly. And this is, and again, to the extent that she and Trilla are extremely similar, Trilla's the same thing. She was also betrayed by the mentor as a child and responds by seeking revenge or the favor of stronger mentors.
Yes.
She wants the favor of a stronger mentor, which is in that case, Vader or the Emperor for Trilla. And so again, very, very similar. The significant difference is Trilla's unable to break free of the association with her former master. She can't do it. There's a line, "You're a monster." And she says, "I am what Seer made me."
Yeah. Oh, very Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Anakin hasn't broken free of his Vixen stage.
Yeah. And even Ben and Luke to an extent as well. This idea of like, I cannot see myself independent of what my master did to me.
Yes.
But like she just can't. And so that's why, you know, when you get that hint of like her maybe almost coming to terms with it when she says, I've carried so much hate for you. And there's a suggestion that she might say that she's going to let that hate go and then she'd be able to move on. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. But Riva actually says, have I become him? You know, again, same point is that like, you know, am I what Anakin made me is what she's asking basically. And Obi-Wan says, no, you have chosen not to. Who you become now, that is up to you. Now you are free.
And now you are a hero.
Yes. Yes. She has progressed to the next stage. She is no longer a maiden by the end of the story because she's no longer dependent on the mentors. She's broken free and become her own person. She's, you know, achieved, individuation. So
individuation, which is one of the big aspects of the hero's journey is individuation from the whole. And then you come back to the whole to understand that you're actually part of the whole. It's a big
you bring
thing.
something back, something
bring
new.
something back. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
I think it's really, really important that Riva lived, just in general, because it says a lot of things symbolically to the story in who is looking at her and how they're looking at her. She saves Luke from her rage and from the sins that were done to her, i.e. the lessons that she learned in the past, and breaks free and goes on her own path separate from the pain and the lessons. I'm using lessons in quotations, but lessons that were taught to her by Anakin. Mm-hmm. She is... Anakin is her mentor at this point, and she breaks free of that by choosing a different choice.
Absolutely. And if I can make one more point about how that differs from Trilla as well. And then I have one other thing about Riva I'm super excited to talk about.
I'm excited.
So about Trilla, one change to the script, one tiny little change, I think could have completed her journey from maiden to queen or mother. Right before Vader kills her, spoilers, but you know, right before Vader kills her, Trilla says, avenge us, referring to herself and the other Padawans, younglings who, you know, suffered because of the failure and fall of the Jedi. If instead of avenge us, she had said, save them, referring to the Force-sensitive children whose names were on the holocron.
Right.
I think she would have done it
because that would have she would have moved towards saving the children and the community and things like that. Yeah, it's more towards that path. I totally agree with you, and that's where, if the rumors of the Riva show are true, literally saving the children of the Force, would be her next stage.
Absolutely,
and like and working with what's his name? The character.
Cal?
No. The
Roken?
guy in Roken. Yeah. Working with Roken to save and continue the path would literally bring her into the next phase. There's a lot of talk about whether Riva's story was done because she kind of had her redemption, right? No, absolutely not. She hasn't figured out what the elixir actually is and brought it back and given it to others yet. She was given it, but she has not brought it back and incorporated it into herself and then able to produce it and give it to others.
Within the context of this framework that we're talking about, she's completed one journey, one phase of her life, and now she needs to go on to the next phase and go on that journey. So yes, I mean, like, has she completed her story? Well, no, because a complete story would be a full lifetime where she gets to experience each of these.
Could you imagine Crone Riva out there in the galaxy? Like,
how cool would she be?
Like, there's definitely like her being a hero, right? I can totally see that being next. Like, not really sure what she needs to do, and then she passes into queen, right? And then king. Like, she becomes like a leader of a movement or something like that in the absence of other leaders or whatever. And then like Crone, and then onwards to mage.
Yeah.
I want Reva to live and go through all of these things because she had such an interesting story and dynamic story.
Yes.
And in so many ways, I wish they would use dynamic rather than strong. That just as a personal thing.
Yes.
But yeah,
sure.
no, exactly. And Trilla to me represents, because of how her story mirrors Cal's. Of course, she's like the anima of Cal, but it was disappointing because we saw so much of Ben Solo in Trilla, and so it was like repetitive, painful dark side babies dying.
Yeah.
Like that's hard, right? And yeah, I agree with you that she could have made it into that next phase of her story if she had said save them. You're right.
Yeah, I think she could have. But that's what brings me to my absolute favorite thing about Reva for the moment. And if they keep going with her story, I'm so here for it. But here's the thing. When she has the opportunity to torture Leia, and everyone needs to watch episode 4 again, because this is really important. You will see her hesitate. She hesitates again and again. She can't bring herself to push the button. Her face is so conflicted. She keeps trying to give Leia more chances because she doesn't want to do this.
Yeah.
And she chooses not to. And then obviously later she
gets interrupted, and then she doesn't, of course. She chooses to not harm Luke.
Yes, and then later she chooses not to harm Luke. The other thing I want to mention is what is the path?
Oh.
People like Tala, who is another mother figure, a dark mother figure.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes. Yeah, she absolutely is. People like Tala are moving people, but especially Force-sensitive children, to safety. Where does she take Leia to try to get her out? Through a tunnel.
Yeah.
It's a birth canal.
Yeah.
Tala is a midwife.
Yeah.
Who's waiting at the end?
The Dark Mother.
Yes. So she takes her. So Tala sort of births Leia to Reva, who takes her on and becomes the next one. Yeah. Then when Reva finds Luke, he's in a canyon. It's another birth canal. And she literally bears him out. She carries him out. She is now the midwife. She took him out and returned him to his family. And so she has completed her journey from trapped maiden to mother or midwife, queen. Basically. Yeah. Yes, or queen.
Yeah.
And I just think
the point of it is caring for others and caring for society. Like that's like it's
symbolic. It's not symbolic, literal, but it's cool. And so I just thought that was the most amazing thing that imagery appeared for both children. And so to your point about her being, Anakin's anima, I mean, not only is she's
protecting his and Padme's children
exactly
through the darkness that she goes through, and and like because of her adversity to Anakin, she is that for him. She is anti-Anakin and thus pro-Padme.
Yes, exactly. She's almost like an extension of Padme in a way, because and she in so many ways, not just in the somewhat mothering role there and the protector of the children, but also in that, the fact that Reva proves it is possible to come back from the dark side and everything also validates Padme's hope for Anakin.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I love her so much. I love Reva. She's my new favorite character.
I really hope we get Moses Ingram back as Reva and we get more stories, because there's so much value in this. It would be really wonderful to see her go through all of these other stages and really archetypically transform and give more stories for women and femme aspects of self to identify with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go on to the next phase, but it's kind of a transitional person. It's good. So we're going to be primarily moving on to Queen Mother next, but I think it's really, really important to talk about Kira. And this is yours. This is great. This is so great, Missy.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot on Kira, but what's interesting about her is that we do get to see her go through an arc, but it's a different kind of arc. Instead of going from, like a trapped character to, to a fully robust, free archetype of the next phase, she actually has a corruption arc.
Yeah.
She starts out as a sort of maiden hero, she's not
like a street rat with a heart of gold or whatever, like a smuggler with a heart of gold. She is a feminine Han Solo. Yeah. Right.
She's a hero. Arguably she's out of maiden phase because she's no longer dependent on anyone. She's completely independent, which is great for her. And then, and she's helping people and she's, doing what she needs to do. So that's great. But then what happens is that as she progresses into the Mother Queen archetype, she now has to retreat for self-preservation. She has to kind of go along with the dominant culture for her own, safety. So, what is it? Han says to her, like, oh, I didn't know you got out. And she's like, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's trapped. And because she's not really fighting it, because she's just kind of going along with it, that makes her a snow queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, nope, I'm here.
She even sort of like lives in a fortress and there's so much snow that is used in it, and she only is pulled out of it because of aspects of herself coming back. Yeah.
But even then, like by the end of it, she still kind of returns to that.
She goes back to the fortress and flies away.
She does. So I would say, it's interesting. They always indicated at the end of that movie that there was more to her story, and I don't think we've ever seen it since then.
She's been in some of the Marvel comics, but she is very similar because it's all, Crimson Dawn stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they could do some really interesting stuff with her, especially if, since she's kind of still in that, like I said, Snow Queen phase of just kind of like, I'm retreating. It's all about me. I'm not trying to help the kingdom right now. I can't.
Yeah, and I'm also not actively being aggressive against anybody, which would be the sorceress aspects, right?
Exactly.
And sorceresses can have sort of seduction-like qualities to them, like you get Cersei and others. But primarily, you're right. She does retreat. She is a snow queen.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting because if they did, more actively pursue her story, she might either, to your point, become more aggressive and become a sorceress, or if she had a redemption arc, she would become a king. And I think that's totally within the cards for her if they did it that way.
Yeah.
So,
and kings symbolically are sort of like the height, the archetypical symbol of the society's health.
Yes.
Right. So when we get a king in a story, or a king-like person, or a person fulfilling that role within the society, we get the health of the society from the lens that which the archetype is used. Mon Mothma being the rebellion's king.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really fascinated to dig into Andor and see what we get out of that.
Yeah. Really, really fascinating to see.
I want to briefly talk about the 5 priestesses from the Yoda arc in season 6 of the Clone Wars. They're in there for like an episode. It's called Destiny. And Yoda is told by Qui-Gon on Dagobah to go and seek out the source of the midichlorians in the galaxy, and it's this planet that only like lasts while he's there. It's an elsewhere. It's what I like to call elsewhere, which is like what some people would call world between worlds, but the tree in Dagobah counts, the Mortis counts. There are other kind of vergences in the Force where suddenly you're in the Force. The 5 priestesses, they start out as one and then they separate into 5 different emotions, but yet they are whole. And they show kind of darker anger and sadness emotions in their formation, including kind of a middle like ennui version, like, I don't care. And then happiness and joy are part of them too. But there's a wholeness to the femininity that is presented on screen that is Yoda needs to understand. And so what they do is they literally go and send him to fight his own shadow, the like dark part of Yoda. And he fights a shadow Yoda. Right? So I do want to call them out that there is this like whole goddess version of a feminine in Star Wars symbolically. And that was cool for me, but we got so little of it that it's hard to explore what that meant for Yoda. She is just a goddess figure in his own journey to represent the internal aspects of his feminine that are actually very constrained. They're in like inside, they're not out in the open, and they're rigid structures of what he thinks is allowable and separated. He is separated from his emotions.
Yeah. There's a reason why, he says to Anakin, well, you need to let your fear go. Don't be afraid of losing things. And like, that's wrong.
He gets there. Yeah. Like he understands that eventually like loss and failure and processing those things is actually valuable. By the time he's a Force Ghost talking to Luke on Acto, right? Like he understands a lot more by then than he does in the original trilogy or even before. He makes a lot of mistakes. Yoda makes a lot of mistakes. Like, let's just be honest.
Yeah. He does.
All right, let's talk about the coolest dark feminine figure other than Ventress, which is another Night Sister. Let's talk about Mother Talzin. She is not actually a crone.
She seems like she would be, but she's not, right?
It's in her name, Mother.
Yeah.
Just because, sometimes George had zero chill with being direct with symbolism.
I love it. Star Wars is not subtle, and it's great like that.
Yeah. She is a sorceress.
She is. She's very cool. She's a really cool sorceress. And she is, in spite of the fact that she's not technically a crone, she's still Baba Yaga.
Yeah, she is. Let's talk about that. Oh my God. So the voice actress was told to do a Romanian accent.
Yeah, it's really noticeable.
And so she actually, the actress actually did more of a Russian accent. And so who's Baba Yaga? Let's talk about Baba Yaga briefly.
Okay.
She is the archetypical witch, but yet she is also all the aspects of the goddess. She is good and she is bad.
Yep.
Like, quote unquote. But when you talk about gods and goddesses from an archetypical perspective, goodness and badness doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It just is. It's nature. The idea that there is something wrong with a wolf killing a rabbit to eat is a human idea. So that's the power that Mother Talzin has. It is natural. It comes from nature. She uses the power of the Dothamirian planet.
Yes.
It comes from the planet. It is nature. And what's really, really, really key about this is it's not evil. I know she's dark. I know she's dark, but it's not evil.
It's not. It's not at all.
It is.
I think it's extraordinary. So, I want to go back briefly to what we talked about as far as, remember we said seeds, eggs, bones, and we talked about how these are very visible on Dathomir.
Yeah.
Baba Yaga's hut is surrounded by a fence of bones. And in most versions, her house sits on chicken legs as if it's nesting. So what we're talking about there is proximity to both bones and eggs.
And life. Yeah.
These sources of wisdom, of intuition, of the life-death life cycle. Baba Yaga sits right there and is sort of the keeper of this, of these things of the life-death life cycle and so on and so forth.
She gives trials. Baba Yaga gives trials related to seeds. Right?
Yes.
To sort seeds, to go through seeds, to understand what seeds are. And she is also associated with three aspects. So she kind of has three different lives in many of the folklore, as well as the aspects of the sun. So she cycles through every day. She is the cycles of the earth. So that means she is nature. So Mother Talzin is nature, a feminine nature.
Yeah. And she's everything. Her powers are elemental. She, when she's restoring Ventress, she says, "Oh, give her the water of life." And, she's always submerging, like bathing or submerging, whoever she needs to heal in water.
Yeah.
And when she creates new legs for Maul, she literally forges them.
Yeah.
Forges them. It's fire. It burns them onto him. And of course, we've talked before about how fire is consumption. It is, it consumes the death in order to rebirth new life. And so he's born from the fire, which is also cool because of how it parallels Anakin, of course. That his new body is born from the fire. But yeah, so she uses these powers. And without getting too far ahead of ourselves, I really would like to see this brought back in Star Wars and rediscovered, because there is so much there that our newer characters could learn from. Clearly, I think the Night Sisters have tapped into a side of the Force that we don't see anywhere else. And I'd love to learn more about it. And so much of what they do is based around rebirth and resurrection. They're very big into that. That's most of their power.
Yeah. And actually, like, Mother Talzin will leave the plane of existence into the spiritual realm, quote unquote. That's literally what it's called. Will leave her body and be reborn at will.
Yes.
Like she can go in and out of nature, basically. It choose to exist or not exist. And oh my God, it's so cool. Also, there's this like meta plot part to this that is tied to the patriarchy and how threatened Sheev Palpatine, being the devil of the galaxy, was about Mother Talzin. So he wanted to, say, pair with her and be like, and this would have actually been like quite an interesting choice for Sheev Palpatine, because he might have actually been balanced by having Mother Talzin be his ally, and they might have come to a different place. But instead, Maul, when he goes and visits Mother Talzin, steals her child to make him his apprentice, which is Maul. So he chooses the masculine child, which in Dothamarian society is lesser.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So he chooses to take the patriarchal choice, and he commits violence against Maul to bend him to his whim, right? He tortures him and he abuses him until he becomes the tool and the weapon that he wants of him. And only is Maul sort of brought back by being healed by Mother Talzin, by the mother.
Yeah, right.
So and cool. And like literally from a meta contextual perspective, the Dothamarians and Mother Talzin are an existential threat to patriarchy in Star Wars.
Yes.
Being
huge.
Sheev Palpatine in the dark side.
Huge. And I this is so important to me. So I want to get to this in a couple things. So first of all, some lines that stood out to me. One is, perhaps a male from our planet would be more to your liking, since you could not tame the female.
Yeah.
They are untamed.
This was Ventress being the sort of apprentice of Dooku before, and
right.
Offering Savage.
Exactly. So, but what this is an acknowledgement that these women, these are wild women that cannot be tamed. And that is a threat to patriarchy. And it's repeated several times when Dooku arrives and, says something about, I think the Night Sisters pledging their allegiance to the Separatists, and Mother Talzin's like, nope, we're good. That's a threat to patriarchy. They are refusing to submit. That is dangerous. These are women
even though the Separatists are like their own thing or whatever, they don't want to be part of the institution.
Right. Yeah. They're basically saying, no, we're completely independent. And historically, anytime there's been a group of women who are independent of dominant patriarchal culture, where they're not wives, they're not daughters, they're just completely independent women. They choose their own mates. They, maybe they're widowed or divorced or whatever, or maybe they're just, women who are, supporting one another independently of any masculine members of their families. Those people are always called witches, and they are always scapegoated historically when something bad happens, and patriarchy will come after them. And so, of course, what happens? Dooku sends Grievous, who repeatedly over and over and over says, "We will burn through them. We will," and then he literally does. The weapon
he burns the witches,
burns them. He burns,
and they send like a huge legion of droids. Like Palpatine wants them destroyed because they represent this otherness that is uncontrollable by him.
Yes.
Okay. Are the Night Sisters gone permanently from the galaxy? No. I personally, because of how they represent, it would literally just take the right idea, i.e. Mirren, to be reborn, right? To say, I'm going to start these again, and to plug into the Force in the unique way that they plug into the Force, in this wild woman archetype way. And also, from a wild woman archetype, there is no such thing as death.
Yes, absolutely. It's all the life cycle. So if
Mother Talzin could be fine. Quite literally, she could be fine. We've seen the spirit ghost-ish stuff come back in that Rebels episode with Maul, where he uses the Night Sisters to possess Kanan and Sabine against Ezra to kind of convince him to join him.
Yeah.
And there's the whole join me, Ezra. Anyways, that spiritual energy doesn't leave, right? And that's actually something that Marie-Louise von Franz talks about in fairy tales, that witches possess but are never dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
That spiritual energy, that dirty down, earthy, natural spiritual energy, especially archetypically, never can die. It's always a shadow of patriarchy. As much as they try to kill it, it pops up.
And Baba Yaga does not die.
Baba Yaga cannot die. She is nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's just, and that's the thing, is I feel like the Night Sisters, they have this, again, this intuition, this wisdom to offer the galaxy something separate from the Jedi or the Sith or whatever. And this is what they offer. And I think that they need to come back, and we need to see that dark feminine integrated in the galaxy somehow. And I do think, to your point, I think Mirren could certainly return. She's, as far as we know, she's alive. And not only that, but the last thing she did was help, again, save Force sensitive children, which we know then helps progress someone.
She's now a mother.
Exactly. So
queen.
She has, she's now in the mother queen phase. So she could certainly return. And then to your point, Mother Talzin could certainly return, not just because death is not final in Star Wars and in myth in general, but also because her next phase reasonably should be in a literal or metaphorical death, because the last thing she did before she died was a moment of sacrifice in order to save her, her family, her culture, her children. She was trying to save Maul. And so
she could become the Crone of the galaxy, which would be so dope.
Exactly. She'd become the Crone.
Yeah. One thing I also want to point out is that Baba Yaga treats women and men differently in fairy tales. Women she gives trials to, which she gives to Ventress multiple times. She gives her tasks, basically. And to Maul, she only gives comfort and love, which is exactly how Baba Yaga behaves towards Ivan and Vasilisa in the stories that she has presented in folklore. So it is archetypically the mother to a masculine figure versus the mother to a feminine figure is different. There's a really interesting thing that happens with Mother Talzin, where she treats Ventress, she welcomes her back, but she has duty. She has to do things for the community. Whereas Maul, she gives. And that's sort of, I think, reflecting on what both like typically femme people need from their mothers, which is to learn the ways of femme, versus men need to reconnect with their emotions and unconditional love. And I just think that that's just really interesting that it plays out that way in Star Wars with our two main Dothamirian heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're heroes, or they're adventures. They're not, I don't believe that there's anything as a villain in Star Wars, actually.
Well, certainly not the way their stories are told in the Clone Wars. Neither of them are villains in the Clone Wars, the way that they're, at least not in the end.
No.
The way that their stories are told.
They're both just adventurers on their own journey, and you can view them that way.
Yep.
Okay, that's cool. Anything else about Mother Talzin?
I don't think so, but I think she's really, really cool, and I
need her to come back. Get that.
I want her back.
Get that green, misty like fire. And another really interesting aspect, like psychologically and like in culture, it's a visual trope to use green fire as evil. And she is that. But I would argue that it's more that she's more like system agnostic. You know, like she doesn't believe in she doesn't believe in the system. You know, she's like
well, she exists outside of it.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point. This is, I mean, so it's the thesis of the Swan Maiden book that I always talk about is, you know, woman as other. And that's what the animal bride is, right? She is woman as other. She is not human. And of course, obviously the wild woman, same thing. That is what Mother Talzin and all the Night Sisters are. They are the wild women. They are beasts. They are separate. They are not, you know, part of the dominant culture of the galaxy. They refuse it. They deny it. They separate themselves from it. And yet they have so much wisdom and power to offer for people that come to them seeking it.
Yeah. And it's a non-patriarchal version of a journey and a truth and a way back from being spiritually dead.
Yeah. Well, and the Jedi are always taking children away from their families, and the Night Sisters are always welcoming children home. Yeah. So
that in and of itself should tell you who's doing the right thing and who's doing the wrong thing. Because the original sin of Star Wars is separation from from the family. And family can be the adopted family, right? It's wherever and I think that was very, very well proven in Obi-Wan Kenobi, that Obi-Wan's like, no, Luke needs to stay with his family. Leia needs to be brought home to the family. The family is the aspect that is really, really important.
Yeah, we are Team Baru around here, right?
Team Baru crew, as the Blast Points like to point out.
Like it.
Also Alderaan is the cat's meow. It's amazing. I love it. Anyways, let's move on. We're gonna move on because it was really shocking to me, like when we dug into this, that Mother Talzin was not a crone. That actually coming into the aspects of crone would be really revolutionary for Star Wars to actually have a crone exist out there. That is femme presenting. Let's talk about crones. What are crones again?
Okay. All right. So this is where I am going to read a fairly longish quote, but I think it just sets us up so well for this discussion.
Excellent.
All right. Here is, and this quote is from an author named, let me make sure I get this right, from an author named K.M. Weiland. And the reason I'm referencing her work is because she actually references all the exact same books that Marie Claire and I do. So it works really well. I think that she has an analysis that I really jive with. So that's why I'm quoting her. But this all comes from the same types of sources. But what she says is, in so many ways, the crone archetype starts out broken. She who was once king is now fallen from all her power. No longer does she sit on a throne in the palace, but rather on a stool in a hut. No longer is she mighty, both physically and politically. Now she is withered and weathered, hunched with rheumatism. She has retreated to the hut in the woods in order to integrate, to process, to lick her wounds, and to grieve. As all third plot points do, hers has demanded the complete death of the person she was. Her challenge then is to decide whether she will now accept the call to be rebirthed. Whether gracefully or not, she is just waiting to die. Therefore, hers is an arc from disempowerment to empowerment. Her call to emerge once more from her solitude of contemplation and self-healing is likely to arrive in the form of a young maiden or hero who needs her help. This younger character will come to her as a messenger of sorts, summoning her from her solitude to confront the greatest enemy yet, a malignant evil, a superfluity of death threatening the kingdom. But the journey becomes much more, a soul-deep sacrifice in order to protect the realm of life. She chooses life, not just her own or anyone's in particular, but life itself, even though that will also mean accepting death in all its profundity. Just as the king represented the sacrifice unto death, the propitiating sacrifice to save the kingdom, the crone represents a resurrection, the symbolic return to life.
Okay.
End quote.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Are you going to tell the Star Wars fandom, or am I, that all mentors in Star Wars are crones?
I guess it's you.
And who are we talking about specifically? Well, the biggest two that we have seen in the most recent years are Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi and Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is fundamental about this crone stage is because it is so close to death, it is the catabasis stage of all adventures journeys. So that's gender agnostic, that the idea is you are spiritually dead. You might actually even be dead. You are a ghost of your former self struggling to find your way back. And I made this joke when we were covering Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's how Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to get his groove back. And yeah, that's it. You start out as dead.
And what brings you back?
Oh, the hero or the call back.
That's right.
The reminder that there are bigger things than your pain.
Yeah.
There are things, and it's the interconnection with others that brings you back, that reminds you that you need to care about more than just your own sadness.
And when any person of any gender is aged, they've aged out of their youth, they've aged out of maybe parenthood, or a similar phase, maybe the period where they felt the most powerful or whatever. And suddenly they're not as powerful as they once were. Maybe if you're a birthing person, you no longer have the ability to give birth, or to reproduce. Maybe, just
you no longer have the ability to work or play the sports that you used to play.
Right.
You can't do the, you wake up every morning and your back hurts,
exactly.
And you can't do the things that you used to do.
Yes.
You've hit this stage.
And you feel like, what do I really have to offer? And this is why this is why they have the refusal of the call at that stage, is because, Bail comes to Obi-Wan and he says, find someone else. He doesn't think he has anything to offer at this point. He is too old and broken. Or what does Leia say to him? She says, you look old and beat up.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then obviously Luke, of course, when Rey comes to him, no, I'm no good for the galaxy or whatever. He even says, which is why I use this quote, oh, it's time for the Jedi to die. He's basically just waiting to die. And so that's what they do, is they think they have nothing left to offer. And their job is to just kind of sit around until they die. So that's why
your schedule. You're not busy.
You're not busy. Exactly.
Right?
And so,
and literally he has this, Obi-Wan has this schedule where he goes to work and he feels like he comes home and he's not the hero. It's so good. It's so fascinating. He's just I'm just a Joe Smo. And I'm trying to figure out how to mean something to this kid Luke who does not need me.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
and he's surrounded by death so much that symbolically surrounded by death because of the smell that follows him, like the Jawa smell that calls it out and says, "I could smell you from, I could smell you coming."
He works inside a carcass all day.
Yeah, exactly. Like the death, the inside the whale, like the whale existed, but now he's gotten out and is left with death around him. The bones, symbolically, just the desert in general, living in the cave. Catabasis means in the cave.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that the crone, as previously stated, the crone is not inherently negative, right? But there are the two shadows of the crone, which are Hermit and Wicked Witch. And obviously both Obi-Wan and Luke in these scenarios are the Hermit. They have completely retreated from society, from any responsibility, from anything totally. They've just gone off on their own. And it's just fascinating that they both express this, and then they both have to rediscover what do they at this stage of their lives still have to offer, and particularly what do they have to offer those who are coming behind them.
I would say a positive name for the crone that's not crone would be wise woman, the helpful wise woman, right? So you run into her when you least expect it, and she helps you along your journey with wisdom and with experience.
Yeah.
And she takes up, she's not, you don't have to convince her. She's there, and she maybe rescues you. Actually, who you get at in A New Hope is the good version of the crone.
Yes. And I was going to say that because
with Obi-Wan.
Right, because it's hard to say. Like with Luke, it's really obvious when he makes the jump from crone to mage, because it's literally like he transcends into the Force, and like, so it's really apparent. Like, okay,
becomes
he's a
the
mage
master
now.
of two worlds.
Exactly.
That's when Obi-Wan does it, when he fights Vader. So
exactly, and so with Obi-Wan, he arguably goes through the same arc twice, except for the fact that, to your point, it's the shadow, right? It's the shadow arc the first time with Leia. He's the hermit, and the second time he's more helpful. To your point,
he's like, I'll rescue you. I'll save your droids. I'll help you with your parents.
In that instance, he's the one pushing Luke to go out.
Yeah,
like, Luke's the one refusing the call in A New Hope, versus whereas the first time around, he's the one refusing the call. So like when Leia comes to him the second time in A New Hope, I mean, he doesn't hesitate. He's not like, oh, I can't do anything. He's like, nope, I'm going. So Luke, are you coming?
Yeah. And I would say the mage is interchangeable with revealed God or God deification. That when you become the mage, you are deified. Basically, you become a god or a goddess. That is kind of the end phase for both.
Yes,
aspects. It's you become magical, one with the Force. Yeah. And we see that happen with both Luke and Obi-Wan in almost very similar ways, which is this sacrifice that changes them and turns them into a continued guide and aspect. This is also really interesting from like a Campbellian journey perspective. One of the aspects that is missing from most of Star Wars is the freedom to live. Luke and Obi-Wan are forever mentors now. They're stuck at this deification, but they don't have the freedom to come back and journey again.
Yeah.
And bring themselves back to the community, because the community is not actually whole now that they're not in it.
Right. And I think that kind of like dovetails well into this kind of final point about, we've reviewed who demonstrates each of these archetypes. And of course, the only ones who make it to the end of the journey, in theory, are two men. None of the feminine characters made it there. They didn't. Why?
They get either cut short because they die, or they get cut short because their story wasn't continued, or they revert back.
Yes,
like they go way far back, like Rey.
And Leia. I want to talk about why Leia never made it to this stage, because I think, but by all accounts, she should have. She absolutely should have eventually made it to at least Crone, if not
you further. And you and I have talked about this. It's because she's never allowed to grieve her pain. She's never allowed to actually be sad on screen or in a book or anything. I know that some books have showed her be sad mentally on the inside, but that's not public enough. She needs to have had an opportunity to cry dirty, dark tears.
Yes.
And snotty tears on screen.
And this is a huge thing, because this is an example of a dark feminine that is missing from Star Wars. It absolutely just cannot and does not deal with grief, but especially feminine grief. We get a ton of masculine grief in Star Wars, but not much in the way of feminine grief. And in particular, Leia, there's that meme that's popular that always says, lists off all the things and people that Leia has lost in her life: her home, her family, her husband, her son, blah, 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 blah. And then it says something about how she's super strong, like, Skywalker boys ain't shit, or something like that. And like the whole thing is that, like, oh yeah, great that she's so strong. And I'm like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like it's cute. It's funny that she's comforting Luke when she should be upset herself. But more importantly, they are afraid. The creators of these shows and movies are afraid to show her pain, or afraid to let her express that. She never cries on screen. She has sad face on screen sometimes, but she does not cry. And yes, some people don't cry. I get it. But with everything that Leia has been through, we need the visible motif of tears for her. And the fact that we don't get it means that is darkness that is being suppressed. Grief is being suppressed. We're not seeing it. She doesn't get to deal with it. Instead, we have to have her doing a creepy smile at the end of the whole saga. Yeah,
that's bizarre.
It's weird.
I hope we actually get grief from Mon Mothma. That would be really fascinating, because we have an opportunity as a matriarchal figure who could become Crone-like at some point. Maybe. We'll see. I think she'll just stay as a king archetype. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
But we could get that from Mon Mothma, because she is the archetype that Leia aspires to. And it would be really interesting to see Mon Mothma cry on screen.
It would be. Well, but we'll see. It depends what her role is in the movie or in the show. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited for the show. I think it looks really cool. But I am concerned that, if her role is just to be there to support or who's, Cassian, who's the masculine character, that she's going to get a similar treatment to all these other characters. Like if you're only there to support the masculine journey, then who's to say that her story will be concluded?
Yeah. And we only really have a chance at getting like full femme stories if they're the main character. And even then, as long as patriarchal hands aren't in charge of them.
Yep.
And so here's the roundabout thing. Like, we'll bring it back around to what we were talking about, which is, for a long, long time, masculine stories were the lead, and still are the, leading the stories of Star Wars. We need dark feminine to tell complete stories, and this is to give us not just diversity of story, people, like the characters that are being told, diversity of their stories, but diverse stories. So dealing with these darker aspects of self, grief, like going back to the 5 priestesses, one of those priestesses was crying and sad all the time. Why aren't we getting more of that?
Yeah.
Right? We need more of that on screen. I would say a good aspect of the Crone was probably Yoda, before he, disappeared into the Force. Right? He was a good aspect of the Crone. Although he was hermited, he was brought out and helped very quickly. He was pulled back by his need to help.
Yeah.
But where are all the women? Where are all the women who get to have full stories?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that Star Wars needs to keep working on. They're definitely making progress. I think
giving Reva a story.
Yes. That was a huge step forward, a massive step forward. I was so excited because, we were all steeling ourselves for her to die. We were all ready for it,
I mean, there was like a line, like, I hope they don't Trilla her.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. People were saying that, but it was also just we know what they do to dark characters in general. You know, and then who was the character? Was it Val in was that
Val.
her name? Yeah, in Solo. Like, so it's just, you know, we've seen the fridged women over and over again.
I mean, I think that's the point, is that because Star Wars uses women to progress masculine stories, most of these characters, at least from an arc perspective or from an advancement perspective, have had the refrigerator treatment.
Yeah, well, like Tala was a great example as well, right? She didn't need that. Like, it wasn't necessary to kill her off, but they did. So, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so it's just, you know, Star Wars, again, we're seeing really good progress. I think we need to continue to see it. We're going to get that from more diverse storytellers. But we're also going to get it from, hopefully, just being a lot more conscious of some of the patterns that they fall into and what is to be gained by breaking those patterns. Because I think that's the big thing is some people say, like, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's broke. It's very broke. Have you looked around our world lately? The patriarchal pattern is super, super broke. All right. It's not good. We need more. And of the feminine.
One of the things, like I talked about in the Why Myth is Important roundtable that was like earlier on in this summer, an episode that was released earlier. It's really, really important because you're going to find, to have diverse story and to have more of these stories told, you're going to find that missing story that you didn't catch from the typical archetypical masculine story. If you get a dark feminine story about a crone.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like we get truthfully a hermit or a wicked witch in Star Wars. Actually, like Acolyte, come on, give it to me.
That would be so cool.
Give it, like, the fact that it has dark side vibes already is giving me a lot of like life. Because one of the things that people forget is that a lot of our power as persons comes from fully integrating and becoming whole with the things that we deny ourselves. Understanding our darkness gives us power. Understanding where it comes from, because then we're no longer separated and cut off from our emotions. And we are able to go forward as more whole and complete people to take on the next phase. It's cool stuff. Well, awesome. Missy, this is awesome. As always. As always. Fun. We've been working on this one for a while. I think we pitched it like a year ago to each other. That's how it works with What the Force. I think about things for a really, really long time. I get somebody amazing to join me who brought up so many amazing points. Missy, you're awesome.
Well, all I can say is I'm really actually glad we did this after Kenobi finished, because I do not think this would have been as nearly rich as it was of a conversation without Reva.
Thank you, Star Wars, for giving us Reva.
Yes.
Third sister, the third way, the third path. You did it. Yeah.
We did it, Star Wars. Yay!
We did it, Star Wars. And with that, Missy, where can people find you if they're looking for you and your writing online?
Yes. So you can find me. I am still on Twitter. It's fangirling only with a 0 in place of the O. FANGIRLING_0NLY. And you can also find me on Tumblr with all kinds of Tumblr-y nonsense, mostly just shipping, freaking out and stuff, which is great. And I'm AllGirlsArePrincesses.
And I'll link to those in the liner notes. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to you coming back next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is provided by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Cheryl, Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, and our website, whattheforce.ca. We also have a Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.